Hi, my name is Mark and welcome to The Active Listener, where we aim to listen, not just hear. We firmly believe that everyone has an interesting story to tell, if given the space to do so. So listening to what our guests have to say, you may learn something. Welcome, Sarah.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
So tell us a bit about yourself.
I'm a school development manager for the UAE at Cambridge. I'm based out in Dubai. I've been working for Cambridge since 2020, so just over 2 years now. I started Cambridge, unfortunately, right in the middle of the pandemic. As the pandemic started, should I say. The job has been tough to settle in, but hopefully we're coming out the other side now, so I can kind of get involved in a few of the things that is part of my job role that I haven't been able to do before. I'm also an athlete. So in 2020, I officially returned to professional sport. I did have a severe shoulder injury back in, 2012. So I was informed actually by the hospital professionals, the surgeon there at the time, that I'd never play badminton again. My shoulder was really severely damaged and said, you would never kind of endure the type of training that you've endured at the moment. So you kind of not going to pick up a racket again. And I didn't until 2020 when I decided to return. And now I'm back working towards my professional goals. So the main goal at the moment is working towards the Badminton Masters professional tournament, which will be coming around in 2026. So either I'll be representing UAE or England.
If we step back a bit, you said 2012. Were you looking then to be representing England in the Olympics?
Yes. Well, I hadn't actually been chosen for the Olympics at that time, but I was certainly being groomed towards that. So I was actually in the team. In fact, my major tournament just before this happened was actually the European Championships. So this was something that I was geared towards, I was training towards. And I think just being, a cocky 21-year-old at the time, I was like, I don't need to warm up. I don't need to do anything. The injury actually happened in a friendly when I was playing for my university. I was at uni at the time and we'd just done some county trials. And it was just kind of call it the books tournament. So British universities all kind of get together and have this professional tournament. And I was just larking around as you do. I was like, nothing can touch me. And it was just really, really unlucky. I was at the back of the court and unfortunately, had a severe shoulder injury and I just never recovered. And it took me a year under physio to try and recover back. I think the thing is as well in professional sport, Mark, there's always someone waiting to take your place. There was someone just under me who was, kind of the next person. So I was out for a year and it kind of gave her a year just to crack on. And unfortunately she did that. And I was told not to, we can't do anything. So that's where it ended, unfortunately.
Wow. So I can imagine certainly at that level, sport practice was everything, that your focus would be playing. So how did that feel going from such a focus to now, not only dealing with the fact you're injured, but actually being told, well, you're not going to play again?
So obviously the emotion was I was absolutely devastated. And it was, I'll be honest, it was a very dark time for me. So I think mentally as a professional athlete, there's nobody in your circle and team that prepares you for the time that you lose. Like I was training 6 or 7 hours a day and someone, being part of it at such a young age, that's all I knew. That was my life, it's almost like saying to someone, this is what you've done for 12, 13 years and now you can't do it. It's almost like starting your life all over again. And as a professional athlete, your brain and body are used to functioning in such a way where when you no longer need it, it's like, well, I've got all this energy, I've got all this drive. What do I do? What's my purpose? I actually, to be honest with you, actually suffered really bad anxiety because I was getting these feelings where I was like, I don't feel good enough. I feel like a bit of a failure. I blamed my body. I was like, why wasn't I strong enough? Why have I been injured? Like, was I not fit enough? What did I do to like not prevent this? I was angry, like, that I couldn't meet the demands of like what my body was asking of me at that time. And it just completely destroyed my self-esteem. And I think, when at the age of like 21, I should have been thriving as a young woman. And in fact, I was just at this really dark place. So I had to actually have counselling and therapy. I had CBT therapy because I was just very much just blaming myself. At the time, I think it's changed now quite a lot, but I think at the time, mental health wasn't something that was a big thing in professional athletes. Mm-hmm. It was almost like you're strong enough, you've got this, this personality where you're competitive and actually, like, it's like we need help as well. And I think, once you move away from being a professional athlete and no one prepares you for what life is like after, it's very much like, sports psychologists will prepare you in a tournament or will prepare you in the lead up to something. But actually, when it's taken away, what happens? Mm-hmm. And I think there needs to be more support around that, I think, even in today's society.
So it sounds like it was, as you say, a dark time. You were seeking support to help you process what had happened. Obviously, we're talking now, so you did recover and things have happened. But there's quite a gap between, 2012 and now, mm-hmm. Or 2020 when you said you were taking things up again. Mm-hmm. So how did you get through that time, having been so dominated with sport? Now that's taken away. You've had sort of counselling to help with that mindset. What was next for you?
So I think, obviously sport was all I knew growing up, even including training. I was always a sporty person. When I was at uni, uni was always a contingency plan, if I'm completely honest, because, at that age, my dad was like, Sarah, you need to have like a contingency plan in case anything happens. And to be honest, I was naive and I said, no, I don't, I'm going to be fine. But luckily, I did go to uni. I did qualify as a PE teacher. And this was something where I could rechannel that energy. And I thought, what, this is the job where I could probably be able to give something back to the community. Even though I did have a bad experience from sport did still play a crucial part in my development as a child and into early adulthood. And I think just from like the disciplines and the skills that you learn shape the way I am today in terms of my personality, my beliefs, traits, that all make up me has come from being involved in sport in some way, shape or form, not just in badminton, but in, I played netball, I played hockey, all these different things. My sporting careers give me the opportunity to land the job of my dreams as a PE teacher. And it was fantastic to be working in education and giving something back. Now working for Cambridge, it's about being able to share those beliefs of preparing students for life, which is something that I carry with me every single day, whether it's teaching or whether it's supporting schools in my current role, where I can actually positively impact, a child's life. And, I was thinking, people sometimes say to me, if you could turn the clocks back, what would you prefer? Would you have preferred to be this, maybe an Olympian or do the job you're doing now? And I think, as much as it would have been a great opportunity, I think I've been able to influence and support more people in this particular role and my role through education than I would have ever had being a professional sports person. It's actually a route that I never thought I would go down, but actually ended up being probably one of the best ones.
Wow, that's really inspirational, because it sounds like what initially looked like a terrible thing, and indeed was painful, mm-hmm. and so on, has really turned around and has actually been something that's been really positive in regards to what you're doing now. And it's quite clear from what you're saying, there's a passion there to want to make a difference, to help, to support others. And it seems you're kind of tapping in to those experiences. Mm-hmm. How did you remain resilient in regards to going through what you went through? What does resilience mean to you?
I think, if I was to put a definition on resilience, it's very much about being able to withstand, something that really happens to you, and being able to negatively and be able to bounce back and grow despite, the letdowns or the downturns that you have. And I think, to continue to get back up despite the hurdles that are thrown your way, and not just in sport, but just in life. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that even being a PE teacher was all plain sailing. It really wasn't. When I first qualified as a PE teacher, I went and got my first job. And within that year, I got made redundant and I was out of work. I had a car that I couldn't pay for, that I had to sell. Luckily, I was living with mum and dad. It was just like, oh, he's everything again. Everything's very good, everything's happening. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to take this away from you. And it's almost like it's never been easy. And, even for me, academic wise, it's something where I've never been this plain sailing person that just kind of gets things and it just happens. I've always had to be this fighter. So I think, resilience is probably one of the most biggest attributes of me as a personality. I am used to going out there and physically getting it, as opposed to just waiting for it to happen, because that's how my life has been, whether it's been through GCSEs, A levels. I mean, going back into school, I was told I would never make a PE teacher. I was told I would never make a professional athlete. I was told that my grades were never good enough. Every single time I was told that, those goals that I'd set myself, I achieved. And slowly, I ended up achieving those bigger goals till I got to a certain point, and so on, until I got to a point where I was there. And I think it's important, especially being in education now for me, coming from the teacher perspective, is never to tell somebody that they can't do something, because, who are you? Like, we've got no power to say that. We don't know the capabilities of that person, but also what psychological harm that can do to somebody.
So what's interesting there is the fact that you were told you wouldn't be able to do this, you wouldn't be able to do that, but something in you, helped you drive against that. And as you say, you were a fighter, or are a fighter. Where does that drive come from? What drives you?
I think what drives me is success. Again, going back, I struggled right the way through my education journey, not only in school, not only in college, but also in university. I was told by teachers I would never achieve the goals and my ambitions. So I felt like I had to constantly prove myself to everybody. I had to fight for those chances to get where I am today. I did know I did want to be successful. And I think everybody, has that ideal of like, I would love to have done this, I would love to be this, but actually I wanted that to be reality. I did want to be successful, and I did want to achieve those goals and ambitions, not only for a better life, but to prove a point, and I think that comes with the competitiveness. Like, I had this chip on my shoulder, as in, nobody tells me I can't do something. You tell me I can't do something and I will do everything I can to prove you wrong. I was kind of torn between two emotions, was kind of proving a point, but also wanting that success for myself. And this is the same for my professional career as well. Being told at a promising age of 21, fit and healthy, that by a surgeon that you'll never pick up a racket again, did cause substantial psychological harm. All I wanted to do was kind of prove him wrong. And, going through the years, I didn't pick up a racket, and then all of a sudden that kind of ambition came back, and one day I thought, you know what, I'm going to return and let's just see. And 2020 came around, and that's when I did pick up that racket. I did achieve that small goal that I'd set myself, and now I'm back on that road to be playing professionally again. So it just goes to show that if you've got an ambition, if you've got the passion and you want something so bad, you can do it. It's just believing in yourself.
How do you remain motivated?
I continue to think about all those people in my life who said, you can't do this, Sarah. I advise you to do this, Sarah. I mean, I remember sitting once at a parents' meeting with my mum and dad, when you go to the careers advisor, when you're choosing your options. And I remember this woman, and I remember like it was yesterday, I could tell you what she was wearing, probably what she had for her breakfast. She said to me, look, Sarah, I think, you're a bit too ambitious with this one. We need to look at something a bit more realistic, something more vocational for you. And we need to do this, this, and this. And I just sat there and I just said, please don't tell me I'm not going to do it. I said, I want to do it. And I remember it was wanting to choose GCSE PE as an option. And they said, we just think you're going to struggle. And I actually had to play various sports with the head of PE at the time to prove my athletic ability, that I could be competent in that lesson. And of course, I did. I was allowed in. And of course, I left with an A star. So for me, to maintain that, I remembered those type of people that sit there and tell me over and over again that it wasn't going to happen. And that's what keeps me motivated, because I want to constantly prove them wrong, and that's, for me, that's satisfying that I can do that.
So it sounds like to me you're taking a negative and turning it into a positive, in the sense that you're using it to motivate, to inspire yourself. And you mentioned earlier that in 2020, after kind of an 8-year break, you picked up racket again. What was it that made you do that made you think now the time is right?
I think a combination of things. So one of the first ones was actually when I was working for the Ministry of Education in 2019. And as part of one of the projects, I was working to look to set up a federation for badminton here. And, I was just kind of like innocently knocking around the court with the shuttle with the guy that was going to be the head of the federation. And at this point, I hadn't touched a racket or a shuttle for 8 or 9 years. And he just said, where you're playing? And I just said, well, I don't, and explained the story behind it. And it kind of went from there. And we had a long discussion. And I kind of, before I got back into it, started to go to the gym a bit more and get my fitness up. I was sponsored by a physio over here to obviously maintain my physical health, a sports psychologist to maintain my mental health. And then I felt ready. It was just almost like a light switch had gone off, and I thought, no, that's it. And I think to prove a point, again, I went out and bought my new racket, if you like, and new sport equipment, and put everything in my bag. And the minute I zipped it up, I just said, I'm ready. And I just knew it was almost like a light switch in my head had gone off, and said, no, this is it. So there was like a build up the previous year to it, in terms of a few projects I was involved in separately. And then obviously that kind of mentally got the cogs working, and was like, no, I this I can do. And I'm really lucky here in Dubai as well, because the healthcare system here, they're very rigorous with how they do things. So no stone is unturned, they really, like, any inkling of injury. I had a very minor meniscus tear. And usually in the UK, I'd be sent straight off, I'd be surgery, that's it, you're done. Here, they've got a lot more treatments available. And I recovered actually after 3 weeks with a meniscus tear, which is unheard of. And, my pals couldn't believe that. So it just goes to show that I'd have different opportunities here as well, which is great.
Wow, that's amazing. So I was wondering, how do you navigate that space between being careful and maintaining your health and not causing damage, and this thing where your doctor's saying don't do it, and you're not holding on to those kind of ghosts of the past, if that's the right phrase? How do you navigate that space?
It is a fine line, you're right. And it's almost like sometimes those words can be trigger words and take me right back to that situation where I do look at it and think, oh, okay, here we are again. And don't get me wrong, over the past year and a half, when I have been training, I have had a few niggles. The shoulder has niggled. I've had the knee injury, but I recently was given an opportunity to work very closely with BioFind, which are a German company that specialise in braces, so like knee braces, ankle braces, sport braces in general. And their technology is fantastic, and if you do get a chance, maybe check them out, because they're great, and they're a great alternative to surgery. So these are the ways that I'm trying to navigate around that now, is working with companies and people that can, keep me together, essentially, whether that is mentally, whether it's physically, or whether it's through different things that I can be doing to help myself a little bit more. And I am aware that I'm a bit older now, so there are going to be more risks to injury as my body does get older. But I do look at it and think, well, yes, okay, we're kind of 12 years on from that now, or 10 years on from that, but that's the time I haven't actually been playing. So realistically, compared to another athlete, I haven't had 10 years on the clock. So yeah, we can. It's just it's a mindset, and just it's looking at the positives as opposed to the negatives.
Yeah, I can see that, and I think the thing I'd be interested to explore is how do you take the lessons you've learned from sports and apply them to other areas of your life, because it, as you say, there's that mindset and that resilience that has stood you in good stead for things like your teaching and so on. So how do you set goals for yourself and then achieve them?
I think for me, the first most important thing is I've always known where I wanted to be in life. I've always known that sport was going to be part of my life. Obviously goals do change depending on circumstances. If you'd asked me when I was 21, would I be living in Dubai? Absolutely not. So things do change, and goals are there to be achieved, but they're also there to be amended as well and changed depending on the circumstance. But as long as you've got a good idea about where you want to be, that's a start. And I think for me, I've always known where I aim to be as well, what I'd be happy to do for the rest of my life, and give myself options within that. So, I don't like the phrase, but I don't put all my eggs in one basket, if you like, to be a bit corny, but I don't. And I've got an idea, this is what I want to do, but within that, I've got certain areas, and I call them contingency plans. And, I guess, I picked up from my dad that, going back to when I was 21, and if I hadn't have listened to him, I would be in a situation where I wasn't necessarily had any qualifications to go on and do something else within sport. And I think it's very easy to be narrow-minded and think, well, I just want to do this. And I speak to many young athletes now who have the opportunity to play for their country, and I'm saying, listen, please have something that's going to help you once this ends, because I think as an athlete, retirement is a lot earlier than it is in the world of work, if you like. Athletes tend to retire around 30, 35. So you need something to take you after that. Make those goals easy to achieve and set mini goals in between that kind of have that stepping block to your major goal. And I think my drive for success, going back to the success and ambition, that does help with achieving the goals, which some might seem impossible at times, but I think staying focused and having that end goal in mind means that I'll do anything to make sure that I achieve it.
So it sounds like to me there's the thing there of basically really knowing what you want to do, and it's very common to talk to people of whatever age, to be honest, whether it's as a youngster and you're not kind of really sure what you want to do in life, whether it's career-wise or anything else, or indeed people who are maybe in their 40s and 50s who've been working in a certain area of life, a certain area of work, that not really sure this is for me, and they've never really felt they know what they want to do, what their calling is, for some people would describe it, or just what their motivation is. Mm-hmm. What would you say to people who are struggling with that? What is it that I should be doing? How would you suggest they address that?
First of all, don't put too much pressure on yourself. I've got experience with this because my brother is exactly the same. So me and my brother are polar opposites. My brother's very much gone through school and college where he's, I don't know what I want to do. And I think he's seen where I've gone, and he's seen how I've got these goals in mind and I'm very focused. And he said, is there something wrong with me? And absolutely not. Not everybody, as you said, knows what they want to do. No one finds their passion until a lot later in life. So I think for me, first of all, is just don't put your pressure on yourself, but don't turn any opportunities down, because you just don't know if the opportunity is going to be something that you want to pursue later down the line. But just stay focused. Whatever it is that you're doing, always, if it's something that you're not happy with, look at ways and means to develop yourself. Are there courses that you can be going on to help develop professionally to help you then strive to the next thing and try things. And I'll be completely honest, I wasn't destined to be a badminton player, actually. This badminton all came about completely by accident because my dad was a hurdler. He was a 100-metre hurdlist, and he ran for his county, and he was destined to be a professional athlete. And obviously, unfortunately, that didn't work out. So my dad pushed me into sport, and that's where I was. I was track. I did 100-metre, 200-metre sprints, and I did try hurdling. And as much as I am tall for my age, I'm nearly 6 foot, it didn't work. So I was a sprinter. And just by chance, I knew a friend, and she said, "Oh, listen, just recreational. We go to this club. It's badminton." I said, "What on earth is badminton?" At the age of like 5, I went down with my friends and just started having fun. And it was purely for social reasons, just there was a few girls that I was training on track with, they'd been, and then I got to the point where I was about 12, about 11 or 12, and I had to make a decision. I couldn't do both. I was competing. No one comes down with a scroll and tells you this is what you're destined to be. Absolutely not. You just have to put yourself out there and just don't put too much pressure on yourself.
It sounds like there's also an element of knowing yourself and knowing what you enjoy as much as what you're good at too.
That's it as well. And I think, everybody knows what they're good at. Everybody has a talent. And I am a firm believer in that. Everyone does have something about them that they can contribute, whether it's to society, whether it's to themselves. So, if you don't try, you never know. I always knew sport was going to be something that I was going to do. And to find that, I just tried different things in sport. I tried many different sports. I wasn't always just geared to badminton right from the off. And my path took me in the way that I was best at it. So yeah, just put yourself out there. That's the best advice I can give.
So if you were to look at everything so far and considering where you are now and with all the training and such like, are there any key kind of life lessons that you've really learned that you could look back and think, that's a key thing that you can say is guiding you through all of this? Yeah,
I would say, especially for me, is if you don't believe in yourself, no one else will believe in you when times are actually hard. There's many people out there who are looking to get where you are. And I'm talking in the sport industry, there's always someone there to replace you. You are your best supporter. You're the one that speaks to you mentally. You are the one that can mentally physically push yourself. So push yourself when others maybe want you to fail, or pick yourself up when others watch you fall. And having this mentality keeps you strong as an individual. But also there's people out there as well who are willing to support you. So then use those people to strengthen that network that you have. But I think that belief starts with you. Nobody's going to come and knock on your door and hand you an amazing opportunity. And, if anyone has had that, please send them my way. I'd love a break. But in all seriousness, once you believe in yourself, no matter what happens on the outside, it's almost like you generate that positive vibe and that positive energy. And especially, if I'm stood there on a badminton court on an international tournament, there's only me there. So if I don't believe in myself, I can't turn around and ask for 2 minutes with my coach, or ask for 2 minutes on a Skype with my dad to have some, positive words said. No, it's down to me. And I think that comes with anything, whether you go for a job interview. If you walk into a job interview shaking and not confident, you're not portraying yourself in the best way. And if you're not confident, then how do you expect your boss to be confident in your own abilities? So it does match in any certain situation that you're in, whether it's sport or whether it's professional life. So that's the one lesson for me, is always just believe in you, and the rest will come.
And so do you have any kind of top tips or ways that you go about doing that? For example, you made reference to a match and your coach isn't right there, so it's you with your thoughts. How do you go about preparing, and how could that be applied to other areas of people's lives, whether it's work or anything else?
It's being confident in yourself. That's the first thing, and being confident in your own ability to do something. If I'm there and I'm in a tournament and I'm in a match, there's various things that happen that can really throw you off, and you have to be so strongly minded in that you're not going to let those external factors affect you and take things personally. You've got to go in there and be really sure of yourself, whether that's believing in yourself and the confidence that comes with, and only having the opinions that matter to you are the feedback that you're giving yourself. It's about that positive vibe that you give off. If you walk in somewhere and you already have a negative feeling, then you're probably going to get a negative outcome, not because you're not good enough, but because you've almost set yourself up to fail. Yeah, be your number one supporter and do that by believing in yourself, having confidence in what you do, and just holding your head high. Especially in sport, you can get so many mind games that can be played on court. I've had things where players have been shouting every time they've got a point, and this used to be something that used to really rile me up. And speaking with a sports psychologist, it's looking at what's important, and that's not important, so it's almost not even letting that into your brain and just keep focusing on what you're doing and yourself. And I mean, for me, if you ask me how I got through a game, it's 1 point at a time. People say, do you ever walk onto court and think, I'm going to win this game? Absolutely not, because the minute I think like that, my goal's too big. It's not achievable, because I don't know how I'm going to play, but I don't know what my opponent's like. They could be having a very good day, they could be having a very bad day. If I win a point, that's another tick. My next goal is to get another point, and I do this for 21 points until I win. And if I don't win, it's not the end of the world. I look at it, I take the feedback, and I go and work a bit harder. And it's just that vicious cycle. So I guess it's about not having the fear as well to be successful, because success isn't I think people think success is driving a nice car, having a big house, having a big bank balance. And actually that's not the case. Success is what you make it. If you're achieving your own goals, then that is success. It's having a combination of those, I think.
That's really powerful, actually, how we value things, what is success for us each individually. Mm-hmm. It also sounds like to me there's something there about what we kind of feed ourselves, what voice we're listening to, whether it's the internal kind of dialogue we're having, or, as you say, the things that are going on around us. So it sounds like we need to be careful what we're listening to and feeding ourselves with.
Mm-hmm. And I think as well, I mean, I'll be completely honest, one of my main weaknesses was the mental aspect. I was very easily defeated on court through mental games. There'd be players that would really get under my skin because they'd do certain things. And the sports psychologist said, but what significance do they have to you as a person? They don't, and these things that I was getting annoyed at had no significance to my development whatsoever. And it was just being able to let go of the things that don't matter anymore and holding on to those that do matter. And the minute I could do that, I just it was like I blocked everything out. It was almost like I couldn't see it, I couldn't hear it. And I just focused on what was important, which was what I had to do to win that point. And that, it's amazing what, once you block something out, how your other senses react around that.
It sounds a real kind of key life lesson in general.
Absolutely. And I think it can be applied anywhere, in any life scenario.
So Sarah, looking back at everything you've done so far, what are you most proud of?
I've got many, many things that I could be proud of. I've been able to represent my country. I've been successful in my career. But I think when I take it all into account, I wouldn't have been able to do it all if I didn't believe in myself. So I think just being successful and the way that I value success is probably one of my proudest, and not giving up. To me, that's what I'm proud of. I'm proud of never giving up and never sitting there when I listen to somebody telling me that either I was too ambitious, it was never going to happen. I didn't listen to it. And that's what I'm proud of, because if I had listened to it, I wouldn't be sat telling this story today.
Thank you. That's very inspirational. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Sarah, and also being so candid. So before we wrap up, we always do our favourite five or our fave five. And before we get to that, I was going to ask you, could you name me an interesting, can be unusual, but an interesting fact about yourself?
Oh, I can actually, yes. Okay. So an interesting fact is, and it's no one would actually expect this given, if you were listening to my story and where I've come from and things. But I actually also used to be a beauty queen. I actually ended up representing in Miss Great Britain. So it's completely opposite to what anyone from a sport and industry would expect. And one of the things that I did when I was in that industry was raise awareness of like body confidence for girls, and self-confidence and the damages that social media do to young people in schools. And so I actually work very closely with Mind Psychological Therapies in the northeast of England, where we would go to schools and deliver confidence workshops and show them images that have been photoshopped of celebrities that didn't actually exist. It's just about raising awareness of self-confidence. And it was nice because I actually got to speak to a few students who would tell me that they would put so many filters on Instagram, and then they would take the photo down if they didn't get X amount of likes. And it actually snowballed into something quite big, because in the northeast of England, it's something that a lot of young girls and boys do struggle with. The reality that they see on TV, and then they judge themselves on that. So coming from a sports personality, and being in a sporting environment, it was nice to have that contrast where I was doing a lot of modelling, I was doing a lot of campaigns for confidence and raising awareness for social media. I was being able to reach an audience that maybe I wasn't able to do from the sporting world into this world. And also it was a nice contrast for me being able to, have photo shoots and get all my makeup done, and live that girly kind of lifestyle. Because as well, when I was at school, I actually got bullied for the way that I looked. Because I was sporty, I wasn't one of those girls that went to school with a lot of makeup on. I'd just been training for 2 hours prior to going to school, so my hair was always kind of shot up into a ponytail, and that was kind of it. So to then have the opportunity to represent England in Miss Universe is one of my biggest achievements, because being bullied quite severely through the years of school for the way that I looked, to then go on and win a beauty pageant and be able to speak to young boys and girls of today's generation about the powers of social media and the powers of bullying, and how the way that we look and how we judge people was something that was more close to my heart than I've ever had the opportunity to do. So yeah, most people probably wouldn't have known that about me.
I wasn't expecting you to come out with that. That's really powerful. I used to be a photography teacher, and I was a photographer as well. So, I photograph models and such like. And I think a lot of people don't appreciate how normal everyday often models are, in the sense that they just see these images. They don't see the person before the makeup. So there's an impression of them, and also the power of Photoshop. And I always used to show this video. I used to do a piece with the students, and it was surprising how shocked they actually were when they realized they were filters. The things that the media do, like chop bits off and move bits around, it's shocking. It's really shocking. Kids, you just take that effect. Well, it's not just kids, to be honest, it's adults too. People take that as face value. And it's not just women, it's men as well. Even if someone is looking a certain way, they're not like that all the time. And so I think it's really powerful when someone who's in that industry or looks a certain way can dress down or say, well, it's okay to dress up and go out for an evening or take care of yourself, but that's not just all me. You don't have to look like this all the time. Thanks for sharing, because I think that also challenges stereotypes of people that are involved in that kind of area.
It does. And I think I remember going to some of these schools as Miss Teesside, which was my official title when I was in Miss Great Britain. It was like, oh, here we go. He's this beauty queen who's all perfect and all, and naturally I'm thin, so in terms of body style and stuff, it's not like I have any insecurities that way. But it was like, when you look at me, it was a stereotype of like, what can this girl possibly say, because she's perfect in their eyes. And I said, well, what is perfect? Because I do have insecurities, and actually this is my background. And I actually showed them a picture of a before and after of a photo shoot, where the picture that was taken without Photoshop versus the picture that I did that was Photoshop. And I put the one that was Photoshopped up first, and they didn't think it was me. And I showed them the real image, and obviously it was me. And I just said, this goes to show. And I said, how do you think that makes me feel as a woman to look at the picture and think, well, that's not good enough to go into a magazine or go online, because they have to change the way that I look. It just begs the question of how these young girls, they're referring themselves or comparing themselves to people that don't actually exist, because they don't even look like that. This is what it's about. And for me, I do miss that area of work, if I'm honest, because especially out here in Dubai, it's very similar in terms of stigma attached to being here. You know, you've got housewives, you've got people with a lot of money that have a lot of work done. You only have to walk to some of the main popular beaches here, and you can see it. And you know, I would like to do more work with Cambridge, and I am working with Cambridge to look at ways that we can maybe raise awareness in schools about this. But that's a working project. So I'll keep you updated with that one and let you know how that goes.
Podcast in itself, because I think that the question I'd ask is how to navigate that space where you're saying XYZ, the importance of being real and saying, you know, this is all the Photoshop, but then also being in part of that machine, so to speak, where you are presenting this, and how does that work? How do you balance that? Do you know what I mean? It's a difficult one. Favorite song or piece of music?
Oh, it'd have to be an Ed Sheeran song, and it's called Shape of You, only purely because it's the one that I got married to. I'd have to take that one.
So it's a special place in your heart.
Special place in my heart, because my husband's been an absolute trooper. He's been a rock, and especially during kind of this comeback series as well, where I have had tears, I've had tantrums, I've had, this is not happening for me, this is not the way that I planned for it to go. And he's been the one that's kind of said, listen, like, look where you've come from. And I guess the voice of reason. He's very different to me in his personality. So he kind of calms me down a bit when I'm getting a bit too ahead of myself or getting a bit too passionate about it. He's like, listen, like, kind of brings me back down to earth a little bit in reality at times. So yeah, so he plays a big part in all this success as well.
So a person you admire?
I don't know how many people you get with this, but if they take like sports people or like famous people, I don't know, but for me it's my grandma. You know, I think my grandma's the most inspirational woman that I've ever known. She's had the most difficult life. She lived through World War II, for starters. I mean, you know, anyone that went through that deserves everything. She brought up, you know, 7 children without any support. My granddad wasn't around. You know, I think if resilience was something that you could get genetically, I think I definitely would have got resilience from her, because I don't know a woman like her. She is literally superwoman. And I'm not just saying that because she's my grandma, but she's 85. She's got no health problems. She is an absolute testament to how strong of a woman she really is. If I could even just be an eighth of what she is at her age, like, I know that I've succeeded. So she's always been my go-to when things have got tough. Like, if I can't process something, I can't rationalize with myself, I'm on the phone, I'm like, Grandma, like, what do I do? And she just tells it as it is. Like, she's so like of that kind of, you know, age category where she just doesn't take any like nonsense, and she just says it as it is. And she's like, Sarah, just pull your socks up and deal with it. You know, I lived through World War II, for God's sake. Like, and just puts things into perspective. If I'm having a bit of a moment where I'm whining about, you know, something very trivial, and she's just like, get a grip, you know, just give your head a wobble and just crack on with it. And same, like, she used to come to all of my tournaments back, like, when I was younger, and I didn't always win, you know, there were lots of losses, and I would go and cry, and I'd be like, you know, I didn't win, I didn't get the medal, I'd storm off, like, I'd have the full tantrum, and she was just there to like kind of just be like, no, you need to pull your big girl pants up, essentially, and just crack on. And you need to, if you don't want to feel like this, then you've got to work harder. And I think those words stay with me, and always have done, you know, because that's exactly true. if you don't want to lose, it's only down to you to make that better. Nobody else is going to give you a medal. So yeah, my grandma, definitely.
Good choice. Food.
Wow, I've got many. Okay, I would say can I say my go-to, like my main one?
Of course.
Would be probably cuisine-wise would be Italian, just because I guess I love the carb overload. So like it's always my go-to food, like especially before a tournament or a big game, like pastas and pizzas. But also like it's very good for recovery food. So because I think everyone loves a takeaway. Everyone loves to indulge in a bit of a takeaway food. But my training schedule at the moment, like if I had that, I'd be feeling crap for days, and I just don't have days to recover. So the Italians, like they've got so much nice food that you can feel like you can have a takeaway, like, oh yes, let's get a pizza, but it can be healthy at the same time. You know, the way that it's cooked, the way that they prepare it. So yeah, it works well for my training when I need to stock up on the good old carbs.
And it balances out. I mean, I can talk from my own experience, not to the level you're at, but training. There are times where just seem to be in a constant state of hunger.
Yes.
So, and it seems to be whatever I eat, I'm just constantly hungry. So yeah, I can hear where you're going with the carbs thing.
I just say as well, sorry to interrupt, but I mean, I don't know whether this is a northern thing, but I just love like cold pizza on a morning for my breakfast, like leftover pizza from the night before, and just dip it into like some garlic butter or something and just like whap it down for breakfast. Probably not the best for an athlete, but you know, times are hard. But no, some comfort food, that's always nice to do as well.
Absolutely. And it always tastes better the next day.
Yes.
So favourite place? I
mean, I wouldn't say I was a globetrotter by any stretch of the imagination, but I have been to a few places. But recently, in fact, for my honeymoon, I went to the Maldives. So I think for me, like, see, the Maldives is just like the complete opposite to like my busy lifestyle at the moment. So, you know, especially like living in Dubai as well, where everything's just busy, everything's just like go, go, go. So we went to the Maldives over winter break, and it was just completely chill. And I think that took me away from my busy lifestyle. I left my laptop, my work phone at home, and there was no worries. So, and it was just, yeah, looking out to sea, all good. So I think that's definitely my go-to place.
And then finally, favourite book, film or video game, or all three?
Favourite film? Oh, do you know what? I'm gonna take it back, and I think Marley and Me. I'm a bit of a softie. I love dogs. So I think Marley and Me is definitely my go-to film, especially like if I'm just feeling a little bit crap, like I can get up on the sofa, get some ice cream and just watch it. I've got a Labrador back home in the UK that lives with my parents. So it's always a nice reminder of my dog as well. So I never watch it to the end because bad things happen at the end. So I always watch it till midway through and then we turn it off.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, look, thank you for your time, Sarah. I really appreciate that. And it's been really inspirational, really insightful as well, actually. And it'd be great to catch up at a later point to hear how things are going and to explore some of the other points you brought up. So thank you very much again.
No problem. Thanks for having me on. It's always nice to tell my story, as always. And it's always nice speaking to you as well. So winner. But no, thanks for having me on.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to the podcast. Until next time, remember, help people feel valued. Listen, don't just hear.